the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Josh Heupel, through 3 years, what grade would you give his tenure? Because I was asked about this on Locked On Vols last week, and I gave a B+. And I'm curious where you would wind up for Heupel, because I had a lot of fans in the comments say, I don't know how you don't give it A-, A, whatever. I went B+. Is that where you're at based on what you've seen through 3 years, or where would you go with Josh Heupel grade wise?
Is there such a thing as a B++?
No, but that's just see. That's the thing is it's not an A. It's not an A.
I think it's very close,
Mm-hmm.
and here's why. Look at the mess he inherited.
Yeah.
My gosh, who in the world? I didn't think he could get to a bowl game in his first year.
Yeah.
I didn't think in the second year he could beat Alabama and go to the Orange Bowl, beat Clemson, win 11 games. I think that was an incredible job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where I would detract a little bit from him, is that how do you start Milton over Hendon Hooker your first year? How do you make that decision? That bothered me a little bit. I also thought Nico should have played more. Not that they'd have won more games if Nico had played this past year, but there were opportunities to put him in the game. I thought they could have gone in that direction. So, and then I just don't have any excuse for going to Missouri and getting blown out like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I ding him a little bit for that. So I don't have any problem with the B+, but I think he's very close to an A- when you consider what he inherited, all the departures that he had, the NCAA cloud over his head. I think he's done a terrific job. I got to add this up right quick. Is it 27 wins in 3 years?
That sounds
Is that
right. That sounds right.
7-11 is 18 plus 8, 26 wins.
26, yeah.
29. He just went 9-4, so 27.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a heck of a job to get. I would have never predicted 27 wins the first 3 years, given the mess that he inherited from Jeremy Pruitt.
And it's right on. He had 28 wins before he left UCF for Tennessee through 3 years. So he's almost exactly where he was at UCF. Yeah. He's consistent. Everywhere he goes.
Better competition.
Yeah. But my thing, it's the Milton stuff, because here's the other part of it, Jimmy, like the what if game. Because remember, if Hendon Hooker just doesn't slide in here as one of Jeremy Pruitt's last guys, and he's not in the quarterback room in the spring, and it's just Milton and Harrison Bailey, and maybe insert random transfer quarterback here. He gets hurt, like Milton still gets hurt in that game, and you go to Harrison Bailey the rest of the way. Like everything we see from where Tennessee is right now is completely different. That's why a lot of love is given to Heupel, and Heupel's good. Heupel has been solid here at Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Hendon Hooker has been the most important player or most important figure at the University of Tennessee in the last 3 years. If there is one person who is the most responsible for the revitalization of Tennessee athletics, I think it's Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker gets an A+ for me because of what he did and how different of an offense he had to learn and go and learn from what he was running at Virginia Tech versus what Heupel was expecting him to do, and just how much he just changed the whole nature of the program in terms of his confidence, in terms of how scary he was when he was in his zone, and just he turned Jalen Hyatt into an NFL receiver. He turned Cedric Tillman into a guy that you could throw the ball 25 times to. He scared every defense with how efficient he was, and just not throwing picks ever. Like, it was, his efficiency was absurd. Like, we may never, as good as Nico might be at Tennessee, I think it's going to be dang near impossible for any Tennessee quarterback to match what Hendon Hooker did in 2022. Like, we may never see quarterback play that elite over the course of a full year. Heupel deserves credit for developing Hendon Hooker to be that, but I still think the only A through 3 years, and just the biggest what if for me, is what if Hendon Hooker does not find his way into Knoxville at the very end of the Pruitt era, because everything else doesn't happen without Hendon Hooker.
Well, that's true. But one of the things you said is the reason I give Heupel a lot of props, and that is Virginia Tech gave up on Hendon Hooker. And he comes to Tennessee and he does what he did. I've got to give Heupel a lot of credit for the development of Hendon Hooker. I've got to give him a lot of credit for the development of Cedric Tillman, who in 3 years at Tennessee had 8 catches, and then he turns into this monster receiver who's fabulous in 2021, and then he got hurt in 2022.
Yep.
So he wasn't as effective, but he was still a tremendous receiver that got drafted in the NFL. So he developed that guy. He took an offense that averaged, 22 points a game under Pruitt?
Felt less.
Then Less than that?
No, it felt less than that. Like if you told me 16, if you told me 14, like whatever the number is, I would be like,
Well,
feels less.
Against SEC competition, it probably was closer to that.
Mm-hmm.
So he took a team that averaged about 22 a game, and 2 years later, he averaged 46 points. That's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
And he got 52 against Alabama. Now, he hadn't been perfect. I'll give you that. But I think he's just done a tremendous job. They also have to figure out how to not have just awful performances like South Carolina one year, Missouri the next. They got to avoid having those incredible lapses against opponents somehow, some way. They need to be a little bit more consistent in that regard.
At Florida too, like because I think that was their worst loss last year.
I agree with that. At Florida, and I've had people get on about how in the world could you have picked Tennessee to beat Florida because Tennessee never wins in Gainesville. Here's why: one, Florida wasn't very good, and that was proven. Secondly, and I put a lot of stock on this, and I guess I shouldn't have. You know how many seniors Tennessee started in that game against Florida?
How many?
19. You know how many seniors Florida started?
Not a lot.
2. 19-2 in seniors. I said, there's your difference, the experience. Uh-oh. I was wrong. So I overanalyzed it by doing too much research. But I thought Tennessee had enough veterans on that team to where they would be able to go down to Florida and get a win. And I didn't think Florida's very good, and that proved to be true. But you're right. I would put Florida in that camp with Missouri and South Carolina of games where Tennessee just didn't show up.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this too is a wrap is like he's very loyal to his coaches, very loyal to the staff. He's kept them all together. There are some good recruiters here. I think probably Kelsey Pope, probably his best recruiter right now. He's developed well, brought in a lot of big time talent. We'll see what Mike Matthews ends up being. But like, hey, the corner and safety spots, like they are going to start. Like there should not be a situation where in year 3, Will Brooks is getting meaningful snaps late in your season, and that you're in a situation where the cupboard looked pretty bare in spots, and it's like we're year 3. Like the roster is still. I just don't think in the SEC, as good as you're recruiting right now, it's good. It's not great. It's good, but you're in that middle class right now in SEC recruiting. And I think to get to that A, because talent wins out over everything else, you have to win some of these big ones. You have to win a Jordan Seaton. You have to win a couple more of these big boy battles for me to put you in that A, because part of being a head coach in the sport is you're a CEO and you've got to be elite at talent acquisition. And if you want to be in that A category, regardless of what you walked into 3 years ago, it's just this league is so dang hard to win year over year. And we saw this year with how hard it is to run back elite offenses in the sport year over year. It just comes down to player acquisition, and you've got to be a little bit better there. You're good at it. You're good. You're not in the bottom tier, but you're not elite either. You're still like Auburn's now come on. Auburn's got a stronger recruiting base right now with Hugh Freeze and what they've got cooking. So they're back on. The Brian Harrison era is over there. So that's helping them. But look, Texas and Oklahoma are coming in here. They're both better recruiting programs than you right now. And Texas especially, like it's just only going to get harder. So I think that's just something to monitor too. Is like, he's good, but the recruiting's got to be just a little bit better. You've got to win a couple more of these big time battles to really keep this thing humming.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. And you got to win some of those battles in the portal. The thing that I'm going to be really interested in, and I knocked the secondary. I didn't think secondary is very good at all at Tennessee. And you can't make the argument that Tennessee didn't put any pressure on the quarterbacks, because I think Tennessee was second in the SEC in sacks.
Yeah,
they were a good pass rushing team. So that wasn't it. But you've got a defensive back that went to Georgia Tech, Louisville, one to Ole Miss, but then he's at Louisville, I think.
Wesley Walker and Marion McDonald are both at Louisville, and Tyler Barron. They all ended up at Louisville.
Yes, but looking at just the defensive backs, Slaughter went to Arkansas. Now, so they didn't all go to UNC Charlotte. So I'm going to be curious to see, how do those guys play at these other schools? I mean, I watched them at Tennessee, and I didn't think they're very good. So was that coaching? Was it a scheme? Well, I don't know what it was, but I'll be curious to see how those guys play somewhere else. But to me, one of the biggest issues for this Tennessee team to take the next step, they have got to be better in the secondary.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious to see if they can make strides there. They've got several transfer portal guys coming in. You know, how well they play, who knows, but they've got to be better in the secondary.
I am so fascinated by the safeties. That could make or break some of these games, because you're going to look at Jacoby Thomas, transfer from MTSU. That's a huge jump up for him. That is you're asking a lot out of this kid to step in and be a starter. Next to John Slaughter, who didn't get any snaps last year as a freshman. So he's someone who very green. Good luck. All right. So our 2 starters in the back end is going to be a guy who didn't play at all, 4-star talented kid, John Slaughter, and then a transfer from MTSU, and then Jordan Thomas at the star, who can't really stay healthy. That's what we're going with. That's the pass rush better be elite, is what I will say. James Pierce and Jordan Ross and everybody else, they better be getting after the passer over and over again, because I am very worried about the back end of the secondary.
Yeah, and I think they will be, well, if you're second in the SEC in sacks, are you elite? You're pretty close, right?
Yeah, you're elite. Yeah.
So I think they can do that again. I think they can record well over 30 sacks again. I love Pierce. I think, look, Tyler Barron's a loss, but I like this defensive line. I like their front 6 because I think they'll be a lot better at linebacker too. So the whole thing to me boils down to the 5 defensive backs, the 2 cornerbacks, a star, and the 2 safeties. They've got to be better. And having said all that, the defense, I believe I'm right about this, was 3rd in the SEC in scoring defense. The offense was 7th. So the defense in that regard outperformed Tennessee's offense. If you can finish 3rd in the SEC in scoring defense, you've done a really good job, especially if you've got a suspect secondary.
I like it. Jimmy, what?
Go. Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.